Okay, do you know who you are? That's what we're going to be talking today. This is a quote by Cicero. Power and law are not synonymous. In truth, they are frequently in opposition and irreconcilable. There is God's law, from which all equitable laws of man emerge, and by which men must live if they are not to die in oppression, chaos, and despair. Divorce from God's eternal and immutable law, established before the founding of the suns, man's power is evil, no matter the noble words with which it is employed or the motives urged when enforcing it. Men of good will, mindful therefore of the law laid down by God, will oppose governments whose rule is by men. If they wish to survive as a nation, they will destroy the government which attempts to adjudicate by the whim of venal judges. And boy, I'll tell you, they ought to do something today. Anyways, the greatest weapon of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. Everything is an illusion. We're in the matrix. So where does sovereignty come from? We're going to be talking about sovereignty today. Do you know who you are? Sovereignty exists because of common law. The people of all common law, all the countries with the common law of England owe their sovereignty to the common law, and Canada, United States, Australia, New Zealand, and all common law countries in the world, the people are the sovereignty. The representation on common law covers the subject more thoroughly. Do you know who you are? We're going to talk about what is a sovereign, who is a sovereign, where does sovereignty come from, rights and duties of sovereignty is covered by the common law presentation, and how you can lose your sovereignty in the color of law presentation. And there's actually two classes of citizens, and we're going to talk about that too. And how do you regain your sovereignty is covered in the asserting sovereignty presentation. So, sovereignty is the right to rule. Sovereign can be a king or queen. Sovereign can be a group of people. Sovereign can also be a living soul. This is an English court case. Sovereign, a chief ruler with supreme power, a king or other ruler with limited power, and action is not maintainable against a foreign sovereign. U.S. Supreme Court, sovereignty is the right to govern. Nation or state sovereign is the person or persons in whom that resides. For the very idea that one may be compelled to hold his life or the means of living or any material right essential to the enjoyment of life at the mere will of another seems to be intolerable in any free country where freedom prevails as being the essence of slavery itself. U.S. Supreme Court. In the common law country, the sovereigns are the people. Common law is everywhere. That's what the courts have said. Even in countries where there's Roman civil law has common law, believe it or not. And actually, if you go back before the Roman civil law, common law was there. Dred Scott versus Sanford. The words people of the United States and citizens are synonymous terms and mean the same thing. They both describe the political body who, according to our republican institutions, form the sovereignty and hold the power and conduct the government through their representatives. They are what we familiarly call the sovereign people, and every citizen is one of those people and a constituent member of the sovereignty. And this is not unique to the United States. Canada as well. Okay, this is a Canadian court case. This is referenced Casaloma. Casaloma's in Toronto. The sovereign people, through their representatives, have created the court and the board as well as the municipal council and defined the rights and duties of each. This is the Lord Nelson Hotel case. The Parliament of Canada and the legislatures of the several provinces are sovereign within their spheres defined by the British North America Act, but none of them has the unlimited capacity of the individual. And this is Australian case. Translated into constitutional terms, it denotes that the sovereign power which resides in the people is exercised on their behalf by their representatives. Another Australian case. The powers of the government in this country are derived from the people who are the ultimate sovereign. Another English case. Every individual was sovereign over himself. So we the people are literally kings and queens, okay? The people or sovereign are not bound by general words and statutes restrictive of prerogative right, title, or interest unless expressly named. Acts of limitation do not bind the king or the people. The people have been ceded all the rights of the king, the former sovereign. That's a New York court case. Another court case, Lansing versus Smith. The people of this state, as successors of its foreign sovereign, are entitled to all the rights which formerly belonged to the king by his prerogative. Through the medium of their legislature, they may exercise all the powers which previous to the Revolution could have been exercised either by the king alone or by him in conjunction with his parliament, subject only to those restrictions which have been imposed by the Constitution of this state or in the U.S. And that's a 1829 court case. So at the Revolution, the sovereignty devolved on the people, and they are truly the sovereigns of the country, but they are sovereigns without subjects, and have none to govern but themselves. The citizens of America are equal as fellow citizens and as joint tenants in the sovereignty. And that's U.S. Supreme Court. Another court case. Their people of a state are entitled to all the rights which formerly belong to the king by his prerogative. U.S. Supreme Court, it will be admitted on all hands that with the exception of the powers granted to the states, the federal government through the constitutions, the people of the several states are unconditionally sovereign within their respective states. Jacobi New Law Dictionary. Okay, so this is even in England back in 1750. Citizens of London are either freemen or such as reside and keep a family in the city, and some are citizens and freemen and some are not, who have not so great privileges as others. The citizen of London may prescribe against a statute because their liberties are reinforced by statute. So what they're essentially saying, think about it, in my other court presentations or videos, I talk about how a judge, when a statute's involved and he walks away from being a judge and now he's a clerk working for the prosecutor, and so what happens is they're talking about here the citizen may prescribe against a statute. Okay, the statutes don't apply to we the people. That's really what it comes down to. And there's more court cases that talk about this. Governments are but trustees acting under derived authority and have no power to delegate what is not delegated to them. But the people, as the original fountain, might take away what they have delegated and entrust to whom they please. The sovereignty in every state resides in the people of the state. They may alter and change their form of government at their own pleasure. U.S. Supreme Court again. And so think about it. First of all, the government's a trust. The Constitution is a trust indenture. It creates a trust. And so if you watch my bankrupt corporate so-called governments video, you'll see that they've gone and created these corporations. Well, that's not the trust that's created. That's a separate entity. So there's two entities, and they're playing these games. And so first of all, governments are trusts, and they only have delegated authority, okay? And so think about it. Do I have the authority to delegate to tell you to go and take the neighbor's property and give it to some other guy because he doesn't have any or something? Absolutely not. And so, again, we got to understand the meaning of these words, okay? And so the only power the government has is power that's delegated, and it's a trust. And there's more court cases that talk about this. This is Yickwo versus Hopkins. Sovereignty itself is, of course, not subject to law, for it is the author and source of law. But in our system, all sovereign powers are delegated to the agencies of government. Sovereignty itself remains with the people, by whom and for whom all government exists and acts. So therefore, the only power held by the government is what we, the people, delegated, and we are not competent to delegate authority to Congress to turn around and pass a law that says that we have to pay taxes, that we have to follow some speed limit, that we have to do anything. Okay, so none of those statutes apply to we the people, and so this is what you have to understand: is that I don't have authority to tell Congress to do anything to you, and so Congress doesn't have the authority. Neither does any state legislature. This is another U.S. Supreme Court case. There is no such thing as the power of inherent sovereignty in the government of the United States. In this country, sovereignty resides in the people, and Congress can exercise no power by which they have not, by their Constitution, entrusted to it. All else is withheld, okay? So they don't have the authority. And that's the bottom line. A lawful de jure government is a trust. The Constitution is a trust indenture. A trust indenture is a contract. A corporation is not a trust. There's no authority in any Constitution for a corporation. This is Title 28 United States Code, Section 3002, and there's no delegation of authority, no delegated authority for a corporation called United States or any agency, department, commission, board, or other entity of such a corporation. And what they're saying here is, as used in this chapter, United States means a federal corporation, agency, department, commission, board, or other entity of the United States, or instrumentality of the United States. Well, think about it. All banks are instrumentalities. Agency, that sounds like Federal Bureau of Investigation, or how about the Central Intelligence Agency, or the Federal Aviation Administration, or the Department of Homeland Security, or the Secret Service. These are all agencies of this corporation. And so if you're going to sue, what this is Title 28 is judiciary. And so therefore, if you're going to sue, this is what they see. This is who you're suing. That's the only thing you can sue. And so, again, that's what they're talking about. And so it's a corporation. The same thing in Canada. This is the word Canada is used in Section 91(1) of the Constitution Act. Does not refer to Canada as a geographical unit, but refers to the juristic federal unit, and a juristic federal unit's a corporation. Now, Dred Scott versus Sanford, but in considering the question before us, it must be borne in mind that there is no law of nations standing between the people of the United States and their government and interfering with their relation to each other. The power of the government and the rights of the citizens under it are positive and practical regulations plainly written down. The people of the United States have delegated to it certain enumerated powers and forbidden it to exercise others. Okay, so when they went and signed on to the UN treaty and they went and brought in UNIDROIT and this UN law merchant and all that stuff, okay, that has nothing to do with we the people, okay? It cannot. They don't have authority to make that have anything to do with we the people. That's why they have to fabricate evidence of some fictitious entity. Spooner versus McDonnell. The sovereignty of a state does not reside in the persons who fill the different departments of its government, but in the people from whom the government emanated, and they may change it at their discretion. Sovereignty then in this country abides with the constituency and not with the agent. And this remark is true both in reference to federal and state governments. A delegate cannot delegate. An agent cannot delegate his functions to a subagent without the knowledge or consent of the principal. The person to whom an office or duty is delegated cannot lawfully devolve the duty on another unless he be expressly authorized to do so. Okay, in other words, it's got to be in the Constitution, and there's nothing in the Constitution that talks about the Federal Bureau of Investigation or the Office of Attorney General or the Texas Department of Public Safety, okay, and this is a maxim of law, and so therefore they don't have a shred of authority. A delegated power cannot be again delegated. Another maxim of law. A deputy cannot have or appoint a deputy. Another maxim of law. Can I delegate to you the power to go to the neighbor and take his property and give it to the guy down the street because he is hungry? Can I delegate to you the power to tell some guy that he has to move his wrecked car or you are going to take his property? Can I delegate to you the power to stop and people and interrogate them and harass them because they're not following some rules that were made up this morning, like speeding? If I cannot delegate that power, then the government does not have that power. It is true that at common law, the duty of the Attorney General is to represent the king, he being the embodiment of the state, but under the democratic form of government now prevailing, the people are king, so the Attorney General's duties are to that sovereign rather than to the machinery of government. And that's Hancock versus that's a Kentucky court case, and again, this is proof that a holder has perjured his oath by going out and saying that these sovereign citizens are terrorists, okay, and that's a deliberate attempt to intimidate people and threaten people and facilitate their murder, because you know that the hired thugs are going to go out and murder people because of it, and that's all deliberate and calculated by Holder. Caha versus United States. This is Supreme Court again. The law of Congress do not extend into the territorial limits of the state, but have force only in the District of Columbia and other places that are within the exclusive jurisdiction of the national government. Okay. And the exclusive jurisdiction of the United States, having forts and dockyards ceded to them, is derived from the express assent of the states by whom the cessions are made. It could be derived in no other manner, because without it, the authority of the state would be supreme and exclusive therein. Okay, and that's U.S. Supreme Court. Both of these are U.S. Supreme Court cases. And so I can tell you that there is no cessions, there is nothing ceded to the United States and Texas. And so when those U.S. border pigs assaulted me in West Texas, out there about 100 miles from El Paso, at their waste station that they have out there, they perjured their oath. And Clements, or no, is it Clements or Cunningham, the judicial, or they should say the clerk masquerading as a judicial whore in the Northern District of Texas, perjured his oath when he dismissed the case. And so, and that's coming in fire the judicial whores in Texas, and fire the United States whores. Actually, it'll probably be more like fire the clerks masquerading as judges. Anyways, so it ain't over, Clements, and or Cummings, whatever your name is. And so anyways, U.S. Declaration of Independence, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The Magna Carta is called the Great Charter of English Liberty. The Canadian Handbook for Judges cites the Magna Carta on page 77. Magna Carta says will not deny or defer to any man either justice or right. Actually, it doesn't say that. It says something similar to that, but these whores don't want you to know what it really says. The Magna Carta is not a unilateral act emanating solely from the spontaneous will of the king, as the charters of the predecessors of John. Neither is it a treaty, for we cannot say it was concluded between two legitimate and independent sovereignties, nor between two nations, nor is it a law. The barons do not appear in it as subjects, for they are freed from their promise of fidelity, and the king, brought captive, placed before them, submitted to the conditions which the conquerors imposed upon him. Magna Carta is therefore a contract, but resembles a treaty concluded between two nations, in that one of the parties, in virtue of the law of war, can impose its will upon the other. And that's Perlman versus Pichet, a habeas corpus court case in Quebec. So when anybody tells you there's no common law in Quebec, BS. So what they're essentially saying here is that the barons basically stuck a sword to the tyrant John's throat and said, "Here, king, we want you to sign this, or we'll run you through right now." And so that's essentially what happened. And so the queen, or I should say the bitch, and the president has the oath of office. We the people owe no allegiance to the bitch or the president. The bitch or the president owes allegiance to the people. And so which the bitch likes to perjure, so does Obama. So why do we the people set up governments in the first place? Think about it. We set up governments for protection against foreign enemies, protection from each other, to administer disputes in a fair and impartial manner. And the only legitimate function for government is to protect the rights of the people. That's it, nothing else. So you have a hierarchy. You have God, who's King of Kings, created we the people, and we the people created the government. And if you think about it, I mean, the courts have said that we the people are kings, right? So God is King of Kings, and we the people created the government, and the government created corporations. And if the government's talking to you, it's because they think that you're a corporation. That's exactly what's going on. And so our rights, why is God in the Constitution? Think about it. Why is God in the Constitution? In the preamble to the U.S. Declaration of Independence, or in the preamble to the Constitution, it talks about ordain. We do ordain this Constitution. Okay, that's a Christian religious ceremony. Our rights, the reason God is in the Constitution, because our rights come from God. And if our rights come from God, only God can take them away. And the communists, like the NDP party up in Canada, like to every once in a while, they put out, well, we want to take God out of the Constitution. And, of course, the communists would want to do that. And that's what the agenda is. This is a U.S. court case. A citizen of of one state is a citizen of every other state in the Union. This is Hale versus Hinkle, U.S. Supreme Court. The individual may stand upon his constitutional rights as a citizen. He's entitled to carry on his private business in his own way. His power to contract is unlimited. He owes no duty to the state or to his neighbors to divulge his business or to open his doors to an investigation so far as it may tend to incriminate him. He owes no such duty to the state, since he receives nothing therefrom beyond the protection of his life, liberty, and property. His rights are such as existed by the law of the land, long antecedent to the organization of the state, and can only be taken from him by due process of law and in accordance with the Constitution. Among his rights are a refusal to incriminate himself and the immunity of himself and his property from arrest and seizure, except under a judicial warrant, a warrant of the law. He owes nothing to the public as long as he does not trespass upon their rights. And that's U.S. Supreme Court again. And a bench warrant is not a judicial warrant. These whores, like in Fort Worth and this whore Redmond in Lethbridge that issued his warrant, that was not a lawful warrant. That was not a judicial warrant. And Judgment Day is coming, whores. All so-called judges operate under a statute, and they are not judges, but they are clerks working for the prosecutor, as found in the de facto courts video and the Fire of the United Nations Whores in Canada video, and the Corruption in the Courts 3 video, and the Corruption in the Courts 4 video, and the J.D. Rook, the bought and paid for clerk masquerading as a judge video, and the upcoming Fire of the United Nations Judicial Whores in Texas video, and in other ones. There's no lawful warrants. Well, I should say when it's from these whores. there are at least two major classes of citizens, state and federal. This is the U.S. Supreme Court. There is in our political system a government of each of the several states, and the government of the United States. Each is distinct from the other and has citizens of its own. One may be a citizen of a state and yet not a citizen of the United States. Did you know that? And that's McDonald versus State. There is a clear distinction between national citizenship and state citizenship. U.S.